皆様、
Thank you for your patience. We would now like to start the International Eelgrass and Blue Carbon Workshop, Amamo 2023. I am Momoko Saiki, and I will act as your moderator for the next 3 days. I'm usually working at NHK, and I think this is going to be the latest information on the Amamo 2023 situation that is not reported on the news. So at the outset, representing the organizer from the organizing committee of Amamo 2023, we would like to hear from the program director of Ocean Policy Research Institute of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Mr. Keiichiro Yamada. Mr. Yamada, please. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Keiichiro Yamada, Program Director at Ocean Policy Research Institute of Sasakawa Peace Foundation, and the rain, which had been falling since the morning, it seems has stopped. As a member of the organizers, I'd like to say a few words at the outset. In 2005 in Yokohama, the first international workshop was held on the restoration of Tokyo Bay ecosystem, and this workshop became a trigger so that the restoration of sealgrass and eelgrass was promoted all over Japan. And in the first international workshop, the keynote speaker was the executive director of the Ocean Policy Research Institute, Mr. Hiroshi Terashima, and he talked about the present status and challenge of Japan's integrated coastal management. And in his speech, he mentioned the regional strategy setting at PEMC, and he also talked about what is the desirable integrated coastal management for Japan. And then Ocean Policy Research Institute has made efforts further to realize this integrated coastal management. And the model sites are Obamoshi in Fukui Prefecture, Bizen City in Okayama Prefecture, Shima City in Mie Prefecture, and the National Amamo Summits were held. And at OPRI, in developing this, we have been engaged in the policy research on regional governance, blue economy, blue carbon in East Asian waters. It's 18 years since the first international workshop, and the restoration of Japanese eelgrass is seen all over the country. And recently, restoring and creation of macroalgal beds, including eelgrass and aquaculture activities, is seen. And there is a focus of attention not only from Japan but all over the world in that there's sequestering of CO2 and blue carbon. This time with this second international workshop, OPRI and is going to make efforts to create a society and economy for the preservation and restoration of blue carbon, of seagrass and macroalgal beds. And as organizer, we're very happy to see so many participants. I hope that from the eelgrass we can have the next step forward through this workshop, and I hope that this workshop will be a guidepost for the next 5 or 10 years. Now, participants here and also online, we hope to have your good participation over the next 3 days. Thank you very much, Mr. Yamada.
続きまして、
I next would like to invite to the podium Professor Hajime SHIOTA, representative of Amamo Revival Collaboration in Kanazawa-Hakkei, Tokyo Bay Area, for opening remark. Thank you very much. My name is SHIOTA for your kind introduction. It is a great pleasure for me to be able to meet you at this International Eelgrass and Blue Carbon Workshop. I extend my sincere appreciation to all the speakers, participants, and supporters, and also the members of the Secretariat for their dedication in preparing for this workshop. We have been working for the marine environment conservation activities, and I have been seeing that our focus has been shifting from biodiversity to blue carbon. It makes us to feel that we need to continue activities while taking into the new perspectives and the new insights into activities. I look forward to listening to various activities and results of the latest research. I wish you having enjoying and having a very productive meeting. Thank you very much.
塩田様ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Mr. SHIOTA. And from the Secretariat, we will give an explanation of the intent of this workshop from Mr. Furukawa, please.
Distinguished Professor Carlos Duarte from the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, Ms. Amy Gonzalez, the Executive Director of the PEMC, Dr. Kuae, Tomohiro Kuae from the Port and Harbor Research Institute, and Dr. Atsushi Watanabe from the OPRI. Thank you so much for having your keynote presentation this afternoon, and this is my great pleasure to be with you in this occasion. And of course, I'd like to say big thank you for all the participants and presenters from all over Japan, all over the world. So I'd like to speak up about the short history of this workshop and the target of these 3 days. I'm sorry, I'd like to explain in Japanese from this now on.
So I am Furukawa, and I am from the Association for Short Environment Creation. Thank you for attending today. I sincerely welcome you, and thank you for attending. Now, as we heard from Mr. Yamada at the outset, civic organizations are playing a central role in this international workshop, and it is the second time we're holding this type of workshop. And the first workshop was held in Yokohama in 2005. And from the United States and Mediterranean Sea, we were able to hear about the restoration activities of eelgrass. Also from Australia, the environmental education activities. And from Japan, there was discussion on the direction in which we should go. And we felt the importance of communicating this kind of information amongst each other, as well as the importance of collaborating among regions and among generations. And so in order to learn this and also to implement this, for 15 years, we have been holding the National Eelgrass Summits. And if you go outside to the foyer, you will be able to see flyers and abstract of the 15 national eelgrass summits which were held. So these efforts have been continued, and we were able to study the various forms of citizen participation and supporting the active participation of youth and the responsibility of adults, and the various forms of information communication were studied. And it is now time to take the initiative to act and cause social transformation. At this International Eelgrass and Blue Carbon Workshop, on the first day, we will learn about the ways of thinking which will act as our guide. And on the second day, we will learn about the various initiatives taking place, learn from each other, that is. And on the third day, we will have a discussion on what should be the activities to link to social transformation. And on the final day, we hope that the results can be compiled into a kind of a declaration. Finally, there has been support financially as well as in terms of personal support from companies and organizations to whom I would like to express my deepest gratitude. And during the break times, there will be the videos provided by supporting companies and organizations played, and there will be banners and other materials which will be exhibited. So with this introduction, I would like to thank all those companies and organizations. I hope that the next 3 days will be full of fun and learning, and that we will be able to see a new path forward. Thank you very much, and let us enjoy ourselves over the next 3 days.
We'd like to move on to keynote speeches. Thank you very much for your waiting. We begin the keynote speeches for the International Eelgrass and Blue Carbon Workshop 2023, Day 1. We have the 4 distinguished speakers. Dr. Professor Carlos Duarte, Distinguished Professor, Marine Science, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, KAUST. And then Ms. Amy Gonzalez, Executive Director of the PEMC. Dr. Tomohiro Kuae, Director of Coastal Environment Research Area, Port and Airport Research Institute, and President of Japan Blue Economy Association. And Dr. Atsushi Watanabe, Senior Researcher, Ocean Policy Research Institute, Sasakawa Peace Foundation. We look forward to listening to 4 keynote speeches. And then Dr. Masakazu Hori will moderate the panel discussion session in which we accept the questions and answers from the floor. Now I turn the microphone to Dr. Keita Furukawa to moderate the keynote speech session.
Now we are open for the keynote lecture. Our previous prestigious presenter of the first keynote speaker is Distinguished Professor Carlos Duarte. And as you hear, he has an extensive experience and leadership on this blue carbon ecosystem restoration and blue carbon initiatives. So we would like to hear your recent activity, and please update us for what is happening in the worldwide occasions. So Carlos, if you're ready for present, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So first I would like to start by thanking the Ocean Policy Research Institute and also Sasakawa Peace Foundation for hosting the Amamo 2023 workshop and the invitation to be here. In fact, I've been long awaiting the opportunity to return to Japan. And in 2020, we were planning different projects. So we were planning a workshop on seaweed farming and the climate benefits of seaweed farming, another workshop also to learn from the long experience of Japan in kelp restoration, to be able to translate some of these approaches to the Western world, but those 2 workshops were then delayed. And meanwhile, we kept working together, for instance, with my colleague Tomohiro Kuae and other colleagues in the room. Then we conducted a global assessment of the contribution of seaweed farming to carbon sequestration that we are in the process of publishing soon. So despite the difficulties in getting here and being together, we have been collaborating over over the years, but it's certainly a pleasure to be back in Japan. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So I was given a task to talk about new trends in conserving blue carbon ecosystems, and I prepared initially a presentation that would have taken me about 2 hours. So I had to change and restrict a lot the topics that I will cover, and I decided to focus more on seagrass and leave maybe some of the other elements for the discussion of the workshop. So as you know, blue carbon ecosystems refer to vegetated coastal habitats that grow along the shores of the ocean, and they are amongst the most intense carbon sinks in the biosphere. So we are talking about seagrass meadows, mangrove forests, salt marshes, and also seaweed forest. And there are more members of the blue carbon family that are being considered now, but these were the original set of ecosystems, and unfortunately we have lost at least 50% of the global cover of these habitats, even though we don't really have a reliable baseline or what was the historical extent of these ecosystems. So our estimates start around 1970 for the best studied ecosystem, which are mangrove forests, and for the other two we don't really have a baseline of what was the historical extent. But the loss of these ecosystems is certainly a loss of benefits for society and a loss of biodiversity, but it offers an opportunity in terms of climate action. And that opportunity was coined with the name blue carbon. So in 2009, after having worked on carbon budgets of these ecosystems for about nearly 20 years and having published on the global significance of carbon sequestration by these habitats, I was approached by different UN agencies to formulate a strategy to contribute to climate action by conserving these ecosystems, thereby avoiding further losses and emissions of greenhouse gases resulting from these losses, and also restoring the area that we lost to contribute to climate mitigation. And that was to be presented in the Copenhagen COP. That there was a lot of momentum built into that COP of the UNFCCC, and there was the sentiment that possibly we will be able to reach a global agreement on common climate goals, but I had to wait a lot longer until 2015 in Paris. But in any case, I dedicated my holidays to write a good part of this report called Blue Carbon, the role of healthy oceans in binding carbon, and that is the first time that this term blue carbon was used. So then the launching of this report then somehow catalyzed interest, both in terms of the research community, but also in policy and ocean policy, to work around this concept to contribute to climate change mitigation by conserving these ecosystems, avoiding further losses, and also restoring some of what we lost. So in Paris, there was a first meeting. I was called to a meeting by the Ministry of Economy of France, that they were thinking on the wake of the COP of Paris that was in 2015, to make an investment in international carbon markets, and they were considering blue carbon amongst one of the investments, and then finally announced a program to fund conservation and restoration of mangroves in the Philippines. I think it was by an amount of about 70 million euros. At the time, that seemed like a huge project, but every COP meeting, which happened annually, the amount of investment that is delivered to blue carbon is increased by tenfold. So on the last COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, the investments that were being announced on blue carbons were already in the billions. And therefore, this is reaching a size that is no longer a program in which scientists and conservation organizations are involved, but now big market players are starting to be interested in blue carbon because the size of the market is sizable, and you see firms like PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and others then coming to play a role in blue carbon, which I think is good news, because we've been suffering a bit from fluctuations due to verification institutions and so on that were probably good to serve the purpose when blue carbon projects were small, But as the market grows, we need to develop more professional markets and more professional mechanisms to both develop the markets and also the verification process and provide assurance and insurance around blue carbon projects. So before the COP in Glasgow, the journal Science published an article authored by Fanny Duberg, who's the manager of the World Marine Heritage Program in UNESCO, for whom I led an assessment of the blue carbon resources of this network of sites. So basically they own about 20% of the global blue carbon resources. And in that piece, she argued that the benefits of blue carbon projects were so huge that we shouldn't really wait to learn more about the science and the nuances, because there was a sense of urgency in that they do not only address climate goals, but also they help advance biodiversity goals, and they were very important to continue to protect that network of World Marine Heritage sites. So in fact, by now there are a large number of national blue carbon projects, and I've participated in, I think, most of them. So one of the first national programs were launched by Australia, and I led the national program that quantified the blue carbon resources across Australia. At the time I was working as director of a research institute in Australia called the Oceans Institute in the University of Western Australia. But we also have national blue carbon action plans in the US. Japan launched last year in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh the roadmap of the Japanese blue carbon program that is very comprehensive, because it includes not only projects but also market mechanisms and their own verification mechanisms for blue carbon standards. Are uniquenessly, I believe that the Japanese blue carbon national program is the only one that includes seaweed to present. So it's also very advanced in that sense. But in COP28 this year, there will be a presentation of the Portuguese blue carbon program, and I was part of drafting the Chinese blue carbon program that initially was a research program, but now they're going to be presenting a roadmap similar to the roadmap that Japan presented last year. So the government of China is going to present a very comprehensive blue carbon roadmap in COP28 in Dubai in the coming weeks. And that includes also the development of markets, financial mechanisms, and also their own standards for verification. We also delivered a blue carbon program in Saudi Arabia, which is not only domestic, focused in Saudi Arabia, but last year we announced the creation of a Middle East carbon market. And Saudi Arabia is funding programs and blue carbon programs around more than 44 states through a Saudi program called the Middle East Green Initiative, by which the country of Saudi Arabia has committed $2.5 billion to funding projects on nature-based solutions in a total of 44 countries to date, including Indonesia and many other countries. And also Spain developed their own blue carbon program that was already developed about 3 years ago, and there's a number of blue carbon programs already in place in Portugal. So every country is developing their blue carbon program, and recently I also was invited by my colleagues to here in the room to participate in a blue carbon workshop in Korea, where Korea is also advancing blue carbon projects. And also in the blue carbon program in Korea, seaweed will also play a very relevant role. So the family of blue carbon projects is becoming very comprehensive, and it's a blend of national programs and international programs that are really advancing the opportunity of blue carbon globally. But as mentioned earlier, the interest on these ecosystems initially was because of their contribution to biodiversity. Now we see them as carbon, but they continue to be very important ecosystems for biodiversity. And in fact, along with my friend and colleague Bill Dennison in the room, we published a paper in 2009, I believe, where we named seagrass meadows the ugly ducklings of environmental conservation, because at the time, not even environmental NGO did care about seagrass. So they were behind, out of sight. Nobody really cared about them, but blue carbon has really brought a focus on these habitats that were orphaned of many of the efforts of conservation organizations. And now we need to rebalance, and that will be most of what I will try to do in this presentation. We need to rebalance the focus on carbon with the emphasis on the benefits for biodiversity. And in fact, they had long been part of roadmaps on biodiversity. So if we look at the presence and focus of blue carbon habitats in different conservation frameworks, we can see that they were mentioning most of these conservation frameworks, but these conservation frameworks never did achieve the goals of stopping the losses of these habitats because they were not really resourced in an appropriate way. And it's only been once blue carbon habitats have realized the value of these habitats for climate change mitigation that we now start to see major investments in the conservation and restoration of these habitats. So the latest framework that includes blue carbon habitats, it's the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which was agreed by nations in Montreal in December last year. So that followed by a month or so COP27, where a set of goals to avoid losses of biodiversity, protect ocean space, and also restore degraded areas were set forward. So really the main benefit of blue carbon projects beyond climate mitigation is actually to rebuild and avoid losses of these ecosystems and rebuild much of what we lost. And in 2020, my colleague Susanna Agustí, that will be a speaker tomorrow, and a number of other colleagues put forward a strategy that was published in the journal Nature called Rebuilding Marine Life, where we pledged and provided scientific evidence that it was possible to rebuild the abundance of life in the oceans to the values that we had maybe 2 generations ago in the time span of one human generation, that is by 2050. And we provided a number of steps required to achieve this goal. And indeed, restoring blue carbon habitats is one important component of achieving this goal of rebuilding marine life. So now we are starting to rebalance the climate goals that bring a focus to blue carbon ecosystems and habitats with the biodiversity goals that were initially the motivation to focus on these habitats, but were somehow superseded by carbon, and we are now starting to see that balance come to life. So blue carbon habitats are present in the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, and even though the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, there was a long discussion about whether there should be a specific mention to oceans and a specific chapter to oceans, but finally there was no differentiation between ocean goals and land goals. Then there is an invitation to the nations to activate nature-based solutions to the maximum of the ambition possible, because nature-based solutions do deliver many co-benefits and contribute to mitigate climate change while also helping achieve the global biodiversity framework goals. So these include blue carbon projects, which are the component of the ocean that activate nature-based solutions. So there are 25 targets and 5 goals in the Kunming Global Biodiversity Framework, and 3 of the most important pledges is to contribute to stop biodiversity losses and also to protect 30% of ocean space by 2030, and also to restore 30% of degraded habitats by 2030. So it's the first time that the goals of the Convention on Biological Diversity are not limited to stopping biodiversity losses, but they set up new goals for restoration of what we lost. And importantly, blue carbon habitats are not well represented in marine protected areas. And in fact, when we overlay our current maps of blue carbon habitats with marine protected areas, only about 7% of blue carbon resources are protected. So we need to also expand the fraction of blue carbon habitats that are included in marine protected areas. But this new framework then aligns the Paris Agreement with the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, because both of them connect in the focus on nature-based solutions and the focus in avoiding further losses of ecosystems that act as intense carbon sinks, like blue carbon habitats, and the need to restore these habitats under the Kunming-Montreal biodiversity framework. So now biodiversity frameworks and climate frameworks converge, and now we are able to finally explicitly acknowledge the link between biodiversity and climate in our policies. So a postdoc of mine, Chuancheng Fu, and myself and other colleagues have been busy trying to translate the Kunming Global Biodiversity Framework goals into blue carbon action. And I will just show one slide. This is a paper that is currently in review, but we calculated what it will mean to restore 30% of lost mangrove, salt marshes, and seagrass habitats in terms of blue carbon benefits. So in essence, stopping losses of blue carbon habitats by 2030 will achieve avoidance of carbon emissions of about 0.6, 0.2, and 1.17 or so teragrams carbon dioxide per year. And then restoring 30% of blue carbon habitats will achieve about 15, 1.1, and 9 teragrams of carbon dioxide emission removal, in the case removal rather than avoidance, if we are to achieve the goals of restoring 30% of blue carbon habitats by 2030. So these are not goals that are set by the Paris Agreement, because there is no prescription as to what should be the contribution of blue carbon programs to climate action. But if we have now the goals of the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, and we translate those into avoidance of emissions due to conservation of blue carbon habitats, and also removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through restoration of 30% of degraded habitats, this is what we achieve. So it's actually a major contribution to achieve our climate goals that is embedded not in the Paris Agreement, but in the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework. And then we also calculated, according to 2010 restoration cost, what will be the cost of restoring 30% of degraded seagrass, mangroves, and salt marshes. So the cost is $2 trillion US. And yet, if we look, for instance, at how can we resource this from blue carbon projects, and we use the value of carbon in the European market, which my colleague Tomohiro Kubae says that it's about the same as the Japanese market, about $100 US per ton of carbon dioxide, then the amount of this restoration that can be funded and supported through blue carbon projects is $18 billion US. So we have a financing gap of about 100-fold. So the amount of resources that are required to meet the goals of the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, along with the climate benefits for blue carbon habitats, is $2 trillion US, whereas blue carbon can only fund about 1% of this cost. So that creates a problem. And also, if you look at blue carbon habitats alone, the amount of funding that is required to conserve blue carbon and restore blue carbon habitats is 10 times the funding that is committed under the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework. So obviously, and this is just for blue carbon habitats, the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework pledges to commit $200 billion to achieve the goals. So we need 10 times more just for blue carbon habitats, and that is for all of biodiversity. So obviously, the amount of resources is grossly underestimated, and we need a much larger effort to achieve the goals. So how can we achieve these Kunming-Montreal biodiversity goals if we don't have the financial resources? Certainly, blue carbon should be part of the financing of this effort, but we need more. And we also need to cut down the restoration costs of how to restore blue carbon habitats. So we need to cut them down. We're experiencing the same challenge with coral reefs, and our goal for coral reefs and our goal for blue carbon habitats should be to develop new approaches to restoration that can cut down the price by a factor of 10. So we need to reduce at least 10 times the cost of restoration projects to be able to deliver them at scale. So that's a big challenge for all of us to think about. And then one important element is that we need to deliver these resources now. We cannot deliver them in 2030. So how we deliver those resources? And that's somewhere where the blue carbon market is becoming more sophisticated. So until recently, I have indicated that the blue carbon market was suffering from amateurism, so that blue carbon markets were based on doing a project, then verifying the carbon benefits, and then issuing the credits. But that is not how financial markets work. Financial markets are called futures market. So financial markets ask investors their money today to be able to get back returns in the future. So that requires that we should be able to predict and project with some uncertainty what should be the returns of blue carbon projects, not today, but in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So that's an entirely different approach of resourcing blue carbon projects as the approach that we took in the past, when the projects were mainly, they were not projects that were funded by markets, they were funded by philanthropists. So philanthropists were not interested in economic returns, but if we need the financial markets to be able to resource the projects, then we need to work into the futures game, and we should be able to present them with projections. So, for instance, last year, we published work that I will give insights into this work, but we used tiger sharks to map the largest seagrass meadow in the world that happens to be in the Bahamas. When we started the work, the documented area of seagrass in the Bahamas was only 2,500 square meters, and I had been pledging for 20 years that this must be much larger and the largest seagrass ecosystem in the world, but it was challenging to map. It can't really be done by remote sensing because of the nature of the seafloor that returns a strong backscatter from the carbonate that hides the seagrass from the optical sensors. So we instrumented tiger sharks with cameras, and we mapped the seagrass meadow with them. So we ended up with an estimate that the Bahamas seagrass ecosystem may be as large as 93,000 square kilometers, which is about 35% of all the seagrass area in the world. And then we projected what will be the value if we were to protect this seagrass meadow and allow the seagrass meadow to grow to past abundance. What will be the value, the economic value of this seagrass market? And we came up with about 170 billion US dollars of what will be the value, the economic value in terms of carbon credits of restoring and conserving seagrass meadows in the Bahamas. In fact, this is about the same size of the national debt of the Bahamas. So the Bahamas have already engaged with the International Monetary Fund to be able to offset their debt against carbon credits from the seagrass meadow, which also increases the rating of the Bahamas debt and reduces the payments they have to issue every year to pay the interest of the debt to International Monetary Fund. So it has great significance for the people of the Bahamas, and it's a new asset class that comes into their books. It's no longer about carbon, it's also about building resilience for climate change using revenues coming from seagrass meadows. So in fact, the market value of carbon sequestration by mangroves, salt marshes, and seagrass is very significant. For Florida mangroves, it has been estimated to be 1.6 million US dollars per square kilometer of mangrove that is restored. For salt marshes in the UK, again, about 1.5 million per square kilometers. And we are doing work. So in fact, now I'm working no longer with environmental economists, but with market economists that are financiers, in fact, coming from the International Monetary Fund, because we need to change the way in which we monetize the value of blue carbon. And we have calculated that if we were to restore seagrass to their former abundance, the value of carbon that could be derived from seagrass restoration will be 3 trillion US dollars. And that is an underestimate because we calculated this, and this is part of the, we actually now have this paper in review. So we calculated this using a low carbon price of 50 US dollars per year into the future, whereas, for instance, the projections of carbon value are already projecting about 200 US dollars per ton of carbon dioxide next year. So this is a low estimate, and this actually implies reversing the loss of seagrass, so achieving a growth of seagrass of about 1% per year globally for the next 20, 30 years, and that can deliver 3 trillion US dollars to the real economy. So this is no longer economic value of environmental services that do not enter in the market, but this is real cash that can be delivered by restoring and conserving seagrass meadows. But it's not just about the carbon value, is that restoring these habitats return a lot of benefits. So coastal protection being a very significant benefit, but also food security, and we are doing very poorly in SDG 2 because due to wars and the pandemic, this year there are more people, actually 50% more people at risk of severe hunger than we had in 2015. So hunger is a real problem, and building food security in the ocean is absolutely important, and blue carbon habitats do contribute to food security in the oceans, contribute to generating sustainable communities, to create an employment, to advancing climate goals and biodiversity goals on land and oceans, because many land species also find their habitat in blue carbon habitats, including the Bengal royal tiger, that I hold is a marine species, because it lives its entire life in the mangrove of the Sundarbans in India. But we should not be deconstructing life into services, because now I hear people talking about we need to create a new biodiversity credit and perhaps a coastal protection credit and a food security credit. But by breaking down all of the services into small tokens, we're going to probably take a long time to develop this market, and it's going to be fragmented. So what we need to do is to realize the value of natural capital, which is the one single certificate, one single credit that is a blue natural capital credit that bundles all of the benefits that these habitats provide. So deconstructing blue carbon habitats into 20 different types of credits is a big mistake. We need to develop the new product, which is natural capital credits. Natural capital refers to the components of ecosystems that might be species or habitats or communities that support ecosystem services that underpin human well-being. And I realized that there's something fundamentally important in blue carbon that is not about climate mitigation and is not about biodiversity conservation. And what blue carbon has done is that for the first time in Western history, and I know there are other cultures that have other relations with nature, but at least in Western history, blue carbon is the first time that investing in nature is possible without extracting from nature. So it's the first time that we actually are willing, and it's economically feasible, to invest in nature and in marine life without extracting from it. For instance, a tuna fish swimming in the ocean has no value. It only has value when we kill it and bring it to the market. So we have always paid for killing marine life. We never paid for maintaining marine life alive and well. So this breaks through the problem of the tragedy of the commons, because for the first time it gives value to healthy marine ecosystems. And this is fundamentally important. And blue carbon will be an anecdote in the future. If we're able to develop the concept of natural capital and make it investable, we would have broken through the plague of the tragedy of the commons, and that will be the most significant achievement that blue carbon strategies may deliver. In fact, my friend James Sterlitz, that is the son of the founder of Starwoods Hotels, now says that natural capital is the new real estate. And in fact, now there's more return on investment if you invest in nature than if you invest in real estate. So real estate is now becoming nature, and there's one key difference between nature and real estate. And real estate, the turnover is also 130 years, for instance, in Manhattan, similar turnover as ecosystems, so a slow asset that grows over time, that stabilizes the economy, and does not give you a lot of return in 1 year, but gives you a steady long-term return on investment. So it's similar to a real estate that is used to stabilize markets. The beautiful thing about natural capital compared to real estate is that if you have a building and you want to have 2 buildings, you need to build a second one. If you have a mango tree or a seagrass shoot and you need to have a second, it will do it itself, because they do reproduce. They also repair themselves and they also adapt to changing conditions. So the natural capital is much better than the real estate market. And in fact, now it's more profitable already to invest in the Amazonian forest, to buy plots of Amazonian forest, to leave it as is, than to log it and convert it in cropland. You actually get more economic returns. And blue carbon is going to the same direction, that soon it will be profitable for investors to invest in blue carbon, just to leave it alone and allow it to grow and thrive, and you will recover more investments than if you invest in real estate, even in the high market of Tokyo. So rebuilding natural capital requires a number of actions, which is avoid further losses, actively restore ecosystems, and also return the inhabitants. So oftentimes we restore habitats, but we forget to bring back the inhabitants. And bringing back the inhabitants is very important, because when you restore a house, if you don't inhabit the house, that house is going to slowly degrade and deteriorate. So in the same vein, if you restore a habitat, but you do not restore the inhabitants and bring them back, then the habitat will always need the helping hand of humans and will not be fully sustainable on itself. So we need to restore the habitats, but also bring back the inhabitants. And this is an important element, and it's really what is called rewilding. Although rewilding is something that works on land, but the definition does not work for oceans, which is to return land to an uncultured state. It doesn't apply for oceans because the oceans are not generally cultured. But really what rewilding implies for the ocean is to restore the habitats, but also bring back the inhabitants. And the inhabitants are very important, because the inhabitants do also contribute to blue carbon. It's not only plants and seagrass and mangroves, it's also whales and other animals that contribute to blue carbon. And for instance, now there's evidence that large fauna plays a key role in carbon sequestration, and that's true for land, where mega herbivores maintain the ecosystem in a high productive state and increase carbon sequestration by 20 to 30% compared to ecosystems where this fauna is removed. The same happens for whales and also sharks. So sharks maintain seagrass meadows healthy, for instance, tiger sharks, and they're not only of benefit for us to map seagrass meadows, but they also are patrolling seagrass meadows to remove excess amounts of grazers like sea turtles that otherwise will deplete the resource, which is seagrass. So this is a tiger shark that we partner with in the Bahamas to map seagrass meadows, and I'll show you how we did that in a short video. So what you see there is the head of the tiger shark. So we mounted for the first time 360-degree cameras. So maybe I need to, yeah. On the head, on the fin of the animal. So we were then, with the special software, we could look around the animal, and then we could see the habitat that it was swimming around. We could also see if it was feeding and in what was feeding. We could see the beating of the tail and calculate the speed and energy use. So it was a very comprehensive data set. And we tagged 15 tiger sharks, and each of them will swim about 70 kilometers per day without complaining, without requesting a pay or taking weekends. So they did a lot of work for us, and in return, then they're going to get the seagrass meadow protected, and they themselves will be protected. So it's a good partnership. And the same, so we map this huge seagrass meadow with tiger sharks, and we have taken this approach to partner with large marine animals, not only to enhance the blue carbon stocks of ecosystems, but to help them map these ecosystems with green turtles. So in the Red Sea, my students and I have been busy tagging green turtles that in the Red Sea they feed exclusively on seagrass. And then here what you see is the tracks of satellite tags of seagrass, of green turtles. But if you zoom on them, which is what you see in the right, you see those blurbs. These are nesting green turtles that are reproducing. So in between every nesting event, they go and have to eat a lot to be able to mature the eggs for the next nesting. So they go back to seagrass meadows on a straight line, and then they do these things that they're feeding on a seagrass meadows. So they map 68 seagrass meadows that were unknown. So we didn't know about their existence, and they're much better mappers than satellites. So we use the Planet satellite constellation to look at seagrass in the Red Sea, and then we found that half of the seagrass meadows that were identified by satellites, and these are only 3-meter resolution satellites, were actually not seagrass meadows, and that half of the seagrass meadows that the green turtles pointed at us were not detected by the satellite. So the seagrass meadows, the green turtles had 100% accuracy in mapping seagrass meadows. Every seagrass meadow that the green turtles detected for us, when we went and checked it, it was a seagrass meadow, and the boundary of their movement actually mapped the boundary of the seagrass meadow. So we are now mapping seagrass meadows in the Red Sea, but this can be done elsewhere where we actually don't have reliable maps of seagrass almost of any nation in the world, so we can partner with these animals to get the job done, and we all benefit. They benefit from the protection of the seagrass meadow once we know where they are, and we benefit from mapping these blue carbon resources. So this is an example of work that we are doing now, and these are seagrass meadows. All of those are seagrass meadows that we discovered by green turtles. They actually don't take breaks like tiger sharks. They continue working during weekends, but they also venture into war zones. So for instance, in the Red Sea, Sudan is in the middle of a civil war where you cannot go and do any blue carbon work or map anything, but the turtles, the green turtles, don't care about the war, and they go and do the work regardless of what happens with the people on land. So this is a useful approach that I encourage all to pursue, and it kind of brings a beautiful example of why blue carbon ecosystems is not about carbon at all. It's about carbon, but it's about biodiversity. So we're back to emphasizing the role of blue carbon habitats in biodiversity, and we can derive many benefits from partnering with the key animals and large animals that also make blue carbon ecosystems their home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you for giving us the holistic view of why we need to conserve the blue carbon ecosystem, and that is not only for the blue carbon, but also for the biodiversity conservation. And the new words that blue natural capital was introduced, and unfortunately in Japanese we cannot have the exact translation at the moment, but the concept, we work together with the animals and the humans helping together, is a very great message for us. And also I'm very inspired with the view of the return in the future. Is a kind of things we have to consider to do the investment of the economic activities. Thank you very much again for the Professor Carlos Duarte. And then I'd like to call Amy Gonzalez, of the Executive Director of the PEMC, that the Partnership of the East Asian Sea of the Environmental Management. So, Amy, on your lady, please take floor.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, how do you, I don't know why I agreed to follow Professor Duarte. Very powerful presenter. But I think the good thing is he's already explained the concepts, showed us very beautiful photos, as well as the latest state of play on blue carbon globally. And also, the good thing is also I will be presenting the realities of the region. So bring it a bit notched down on where we are. And so I will try to do that in 20 minutes. The title should be just Blue Carbon Development and Prospects in the East Asian Seas region. Should take out the supply and demand. And I will explain why later. Okay, so this topic is actually very timely. I should begin with that. Because in less than a week, we will have world global leaders going to Saudi Arabia. Abu Dhabi, for the COP28. And then one of the things that they're going to do there is to course correct actions on climate change, as well as stock take also on their obligations and agreements, commitments that they agreed at the Paris Convention. Right. And also, I would like to thank the organizers actually for inviting me to this prestigious forum. So, okay. Um, so, also, it is timely because 10 years ago, we had a very destructive typhoon in the Philippines. And we celebrated its anniversary actually November 8th, just a few days later. And just to bring home the point on why blue carbon, nature-based solutions, mangrove reforestation is important. So when Typhoon Haiyan struck Tacloban City, one of the densely populated, highly urbanized cities in the Philippines, was ravaged to the ground. This was densely populated, really like a concrete jungle because of what are called the signs of economic growth is embedded or is typified in that specific city. This is a city in the south. But a few kilometers northeast, in a town called Palumpon, a mangrove plantation, you can see, it's not so clear, but I hope it is. You can appreciate that there's a mangrove forest in an island a few hundred meters from the shoreline, buffered the full impact of this 3.6 meters storm surge and protected this town. So just a graphic illustration of why mangrove restoration is important. This is a presentation which was done by Dr. Laura David, which I think many of you are familiar with. Yeah. Okay. So Typhoon Haiyan. Okay. So, but 2 years before Typhoon Haiyan, there's been some calls, and I think this is probably some based on some studies that Professor Duarte also was part of, that nature-based solutions could provide around 30% of the cost-effective mitigation needed by 2030 to stabilize warming to below 2 degrees centigrade. So this was in 2011. And carbon sequestration was a process which was thought to help. And it could be done through mangroves and seagrass. And there are some local studies that also point out to the benefits. And very recently, Conservation International et al. Came up with a map of the mitigation and adaptation measures all over the world. And as you can see in the region, some have no data, and it's quite surprising that the Philippines said that they have not submitted any data. So I'm calling shout out to some of the Blue Coast folks here, because I think we need to provide our documentation to this global study, which I think will be launched in the COP28. But it is clear that many of our countries have adopted adaptation measures. So we are getting there. Not quite, but there. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of this after Typhoon Haiyan or even prior, and also given the newspapers' account of the benefits of blue carbon, there has been a lot of interest, particularly at the local level, for shoreline protection, prevention against storm surge, typhoons, as well as benefits of food security and livelihoods. But many of this, many of this has been misdirected. There's been some national mangrove reforestation programs that have lacked clear direction from science. Because, for example, okay. Okay, there you go. Yeah, okay. So there's been so many coastal communities eager to plant mangroves based on stories like in Palumpon and many others that have shown that it could help. And it is part of nature-based solutions, but then there hasn't been any clear direction, and efforts to reforest have actually resulted in some sites selected that are not ideal for some mangrove species. Some mud flats, tidal flats have been planted with mangroves, but actually the best solution, according to science also, is that it is best where you have cut some of these mangroves for fish ponds before. Those are the best places where you can restore mangroves rather than in some other areas. And so this is one of the things that we would like to course correct also in our programs and projects. Okay. So in alignment with UN SDGs as well as the UN Decade of Ocean Science, we in the region, East Asian Seas region, developed the Sustainable Development Strategy for the Seas of East Asia, where we look at both climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. But as you can see, given the lack of documentation and reports, there hasn't been much report on mitigation, but a lot on adaptation. And many of those are really directed on, for example, stormwater management, disaster risk reduction, management, some nature-based solutions. Integrated water resource management is just becoming also more widespread in the region. Land management, there's still some problems with integration, but we are getting there. Okay. So in PEMC itself, we have some activities at the local level in terms of local knowledge-based adaptation planning, where hard science is combined with, designed with oral knowledge. And this is actually done with the Institute of Global Environmental Studies based in Japan, which is one of our regional centers of excellence. Another work that we are doing is the risk and vulnerability assessment trainers training. And recently, many governments, especially at the local level, have pledged to strengthen coastal resilience more than just emergency response, disaster risk response, but also looking into more nature-based solutions and mangrove restoration with the help of learning centers and universities to inform them on what types of mangroves to plant. Okay. So at the national level, given the need to report to the Paris Agreement in Saudi Arabia, countries have been, especially in the ASEAN region, you have heard from Professor Duarte about the Japan roadmap. I think Korea is getting one. China is going to report soon. Singapore has a roadmap as well. But the rest of the ASEAN are still updating their national determined contributions and the NBSAP, the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plans. And they are planning to do this only in 2024, and the NDCs also in 2025, at least some complete ones as well. So there's a lot of stakeholder consultations going on in many of the ASEAN countries. Okay. At a more strategic level, not a project level, there has been examples of debt for nature swaps, as well as adaptation and mitigation partnerships. There's been some country-to-country discussions. Singapore, for example, sent a delegation to the Philippines to look at partnerships on adaptation mitigation, and one of them is on blue carbon market. But there has been some challenges, especially at the ASEAN level, because you would need sound and stable regulatory framework for generating and trading, for example, on carbon credits. So the clarity of carbon rights, clarity of land tenure, benefit sharing arrangements still has to be threshed out. Processes, they want some assurance from governments in terms of approvals and how to treat voluntary carbon markets. So there are still some obstacles that needs to be hurdled upon. Yeah. But there is, oops, okay. Sorry. This But there is a lot of help, and actually it's a very busy space, and I think many of you are probably parts of some of these initiatives, and they are all in the region as well. These are the different initiatives on the blue carbon space, but there are some relations among them. So the scientific and technical expertise, policy and finance. So you have the Mangrove Breakthrough Alliance, there's an international platform of blue carbon, there's Blue Carbon Initiative, and some other groups. And some of the members here actually are also overlapping. But we just need to map this out because there are so many interventions going to the region and seeking also partnerships. So given this very crowded space, what can PEMC offer as a regional organization? We also have a blue carbon program, and this was demand-driven, and countries wanted our help in terms of ensuring that this would support conservation and improve coastal blue carbon ecosystems, optimize its contribution to greenhouse gas emission, and also coastal resilience. And most importantly, the local government, coastal communities, access to benefits, and actually understanding what they are in terms of blue carbon ecosystem management, the role that they're going to play. But even with these objectives, there are still so many players as well, you know, working on the blue carbon program. So what we found that was missing was the certification. What Professor Duarte was saying was the verification, the recording, verification, and monitoring. So we all know that East Asia is a global hotspot for blue carbon ecosystems. There's opportunity to improve management. And then a very important role would be the recording, verification, and monitoring. And so we have a very nascent program on blue carbon certification. And we have been existing for 30 years, and we have this integrated coastal management certification. So from lessons and from experience of doing so, we would like to venture into blue carbon certification as well. And this has the backing of Dr. Keita FURUKAWA, who is actually our technical session chair of the Partnership Council. We also have the backing of many of our regional centers of excellence and our partners, universities, who have their own methodologies as well. And we would like to see and compare where they are. So, yeah, the potential of blue carbon ecosystem would be that because the region has the rich resources, and this is also a requirement in the indices, and there's private sector interest, provided we have also looked into the the stability of regulatory framework. So there's a lot that still needs to be done, but there are potential opportunities for this certification. Oops. Oops. Okay, sorry. So we looked at examples of voluntary and also mandatory certifications, and there are many, but many of them are in the West. There are some national ones, UK, China, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, that are very new relatively, so are looking and monitoring how they are through our the scientists that are helping us develop this blue carbon certification program. Oops, sorry. Oh, okay. So I won't go through the details, but there's so many in the life cycle of carbon offset credits. There's so many that we need to consider in terms of the design and implementation, from the methodology to the development to the implementation and the offset credit transfer. And we hear what Professor Duarte was saying, that we shouldn't be amateurish in this approach. We shouldn't be just looking at this on a project basis, but we should look at this more into the future. and be more sophisticated in this approach. So this is something that we take to heart, and we would like to seek help also on how we can actually do this, because there's demand from the region, voluntary certification, because VERA is the gold standard, VERA methodology is the gold standard, but it's up there, and it hasn't been able to cope with the demand from all over the world. So we want to see where we are in terms of VERAs and in terms of the methodologies that has been created by many of these universities. So we go through this step by step and slowly. Oops, sorry, I keep getting back. Oops. All right. Okay, so this is our proposed blue carbon certification structure. We would need the help of the experts on the academe, also the auditing processes, but more important than that is on the left side, the private groups for the demand, international organizations, as well as the communities and LGUs. And what is the niche of PEMC going into this program? So there's still a lot of process that we need to hurdle. But we have a roadmap, and in an intermediate, at the moment as we're speaking, we have an academe mission who is looking at the methodologies from 5 countries to see what are the commonalities, what are the differences, and where we are in terms of VERA standard. And then we are also looking at the survey of the blue carbon ecosystems in sites as an inventory, and also looking at what has been the accounting done, what has been the process so far. But we know that a lot of these are for CSR purposes only. So, and then there's some demand. Singapore, some of the private sector there have been asking us for this. Where are the sites? Where's the supply, basically? And so we are also planning to do a business plan, and where, as Professor Duarte says, shouldn't just involve environmental economists, but also market economists. And we are in talks with Boston Consulting for further work. Yeah, and I won't bore you with medium term and long term, because there's still a long way to go. Right. So there are a lot of challenges. There are so many existing standards and protocols, but they focused on forest. So we need more support in terms of the blue carbon, and we need to implement also encourage countries to implement actions for blue carbon ecosystems as defined in their updated NDCs, and to have more focused agenda also on blue carbon in the next COP. But I think we're in good hands with Professor Duarte and his colleagues pushing for that and the next COP. The actions needed, also we need some actions from our partners, and we have mentioned that they should share their experience and expertise, because in the region alone, I don't think we have covered everyone. In China alone, there's Zhejiang, there's Xiamen University, there's so many other universities. MNR is doing their own thing, Ministry of Environment is doing their another, and then within the bureaus and even some of the municipalities have their own methodology. So how do you reconcile? The good thing is there is desire to work together and be recognized as a holistic regional platform. So just a few words about my organization. PEMC is homegrown. It was created by countries in the region in 1992, after UNCED, when there was hardly any focus on the coastal and marine issues. The focus then was on terrestrial. And our mission is to foster and sustain healthy and resilient coast ocean communities and economies across the seas of East Asia through integrated management solutions and partnerships. We have non-country partners, and OPRI is one of our non-country partner. And we have maritime collaborators in some countries that are not formal members of PEMC as well. The difference between COBC and PEMC is that we have both North and South Korea as members. And also, one thing that is going for us is that we have a network of learning centers, as well as network of local governments, which could be our source of the supply for this blue carbon ecosystem work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy, for elaborating what is going on the East Asian Sea regions. I say we because I'm also working for PEMC, and OPRI is also the non-governmental partner, and also we have an international EMEX center for supporting this event as a non-country partner of the PEMC. So we are standing on the between policy and science, and how we can implement the action-based adaptations. So that is quite new move and takes time. So please keep eye on it, and maybe we ask the Amy to come back to the podium for making the panel discussion later. So now we would like to call Dr. Tomohiro Kuae from the Pali. Onya lady, please take floor.
Okay. Thank you, Furukawa-san, for inviting me to speak today, and it's a great honor to speak to you all in the floor and on the web. Well, its title is really big, and it's really challenging to me, but I'd like to try to introduce the current status of the Japan's trends, its blue carbon research, policy, and implementation. In 2018, Hori-san and I edited a blue carbon book, and we were honored to have a message from Carlos in the preface of the book, and thank you again, Carlos. And in this book, we propose the following 3 points. The one, it's a research for the challenge to the blue carbon initiatives. The number one is that research, and the research should be pushed more and more, because we had many unknown processes and mechanisms and or measurement techniques to realize unknown processes. But at the same time, I just thought that number 2 and number 3 is very important for the blue carbon initiatives, because I just saw that the blue carbon science is for the target of the social implementation. So if I remained close to the research communities, I would fail to socialize the blue carbon initiatives. So that's why number 2 and number 3, the collaboration with the stakeholders and implementation as a business, as Carlos said, is very important. This is my motivation for the blue carbon initiatives to date. So I'd like to talk about which issues are now in progress or still remain in Japan. So I'd like to start my talk by science and technologies. It's my expertise. I'm just going back to the carbon issues, and for the blue carbon initiatives, it's also very important for the context of the CDR, that's the carbon dioxide removals. This is because CDR is essential to offset residual emissions, which I mean that the emissions that we can't reduce at the time of the 2050 to offset the to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. So to make that CDR, 2 steps are very critical. The one is capturing atmospheric CO2 from atmospheric CO2. And step 2 is the captured carbon is stores in carbon pools for more than, I said, 100 years. It's just something of a consensus of the UNFCCC. So if the shallow coastal ecosystem is function as a CDR, there must be a net unidirectional carbon flow, including capturing process and storing processes. So I'd like to explain the critical processes from the number 1 to number 4 from now on. The number 1 is the first step of the CO2 removal. It's CO2 gas exchanges. We have measured 2 methods for the measuring the gas exchanges. The one of the bulk method, it's a very easy and simple way. We just get the CO2 concentration in the seawater and from the air as well. And using just this equation, we can get the flux gas exchanges. But the limitation is uncertainty in the K. It's gas transfer velocity. It's a very uncertain. Another method is the eddy covariance method. It's a kind of state of the art techniques, but very expensive. And you can see the CO2 sensor and the wind velocity meter and deployed over the seagrass meadows, and we can get the fluxes by multiplying the wind velocity and the CO2 concentration. But the largest limitation is the location. We must have the platform or a tower to set up such devices. To resolve this problem with the tower, we are just now developing a towerless eddy covariance system using a drone. You can see the CO2 sensor and the wind velocity meter on the top of the drone. This is a kind of measurement device never seen before, and it is really challenging for me, but I'm just enjoying doing the development like this. And for the bulk methods, then if we collaborate with tourism, we can get continuous data from the tour board. So here you see the CO2 meter installed on the underwater sightseeing tour boat, which is going from the Naha port to the soft coral hotspots. And you can see the real-time CO2 data from the CO2, which devices. And the tourist is just checking the CO2 concentration from the cell phone just in front of the beautiful soft coral systems. So interestingly, always going to the soft coral spot, the concentration is always lower than around the area. So it might be very interesting for them, and we have just started investigating the new carbon sink for the soft coral systems. It's very exciting. So another example is just blue carbon expedition to unpopulated island in Yokosuka. So we just have a seaweed farming system and in the expeditions. So we can get the data for the CO2 concentration during such an expedition, and just studied that how much the CO2 is absorbs into the seaweed system, aquaculture system. So I'm moving on to the next process, number 2, which is carbon storage in sediments. It's a kind of classic blue carbon studies. I'm just giving you the example of the effect of the trophic modification. So you see the lake and close to sea, but so for fisheries, we have just opened the lake to introduce the seawater here, and we made an artificial inlet there. So as a result, the fish catch increased, but in addition, the mineral accumulation rates and carbon accumulation rates also increased, and ocean-derived carbon is coming to the lake. It's lagoon type. So it was not intended, but it's an example of the co-benefit of fishery and blue carbon I think. So the next challenging the development is here. So measuring the vegetation and the topography is very important for the carbon storage processes, because vegetation is creating blue carbon itself, and topography determines water depth and the production rate of the blue carbon. So I'm now very most excited about developing this hybrid power drone with a green laser scanner. This can scan at the rate of 1 hectare per minute. It's very rapid, and I believe that this kind of development, the new devices, reduce the cost of the blue carbon initiatives. So this is an example of the scanning in the port facilities. You can see that the green laser scanning can detect the macroalgae in the deeper area, which cannot detect the ordinary visual lights drones. Moreover, we can detect the macroalgae attached on the concrete blocks, such as wave-breaking blocks as well. This is an example for the natural sargassum beds. That you can see the dense vegetation around here, and the sparse area here. It's very represented by the green laser scanner. So we are also doing the validation of the accuracy using these green laser scanners by making test beds, macroalgae beds here, and we just compare the vegetation lengths in observed and scanned data. So you will see the very good relationship between the observed and the scanned data. I'm very happy about that. And also in the seagrass Terracea meadow in Naha area. So you see the station 1 where the seagrass vegetation is longer and dense. So we can get a good agreement with the observed data and the scanned data. But in station 2, where the shoot length is shorter and the sparse area, so there's some differences between them. I think it's a kind of difficulty in distinguish between the shoot and seabed. So that's the limitation of some green laser drone, but anyway, the good agreement with the vegetation length from the 1 meter to 4 meter is really good news for us. So I'm moving on to the number 3, carbon storage in seawater as RDOC, which is refractory dissolved organic carbon. This is a very important process for the storing the carbon created by the seaweeds. We can determine such production rates by enclosing the vegetation and get the DOC production rates, and also just doing the incubation degradation experiment to see how much the DOC is degraded to mineralized CO2. This is some results of the ongoing experiments with the production ratio of DOC by the vegetation. So you see the percentage of the DOC to net primary production is around 20 to 40%, which might be expected as rates. And also we are doing the degradation experiments to estimate the DOC stores more than 100 years as RDOC. This could be estimated using such a degradation experiment, and you will see the RDOC to total DOC is around 5 to 15% for the more than 100 years. It could be it will be higher than expected, but we are just going on such experiments and changing the environmental incubation conditions. Well, so I'm moving to the number 4 processes, which is the transport carbon into deep sea. This is just that Dolte and Carlos is published in Nature Geoscience in 2016, and this has a huge impact in the blue carbon communities. And this transport to deep sea process is led by the Horison's group in Japan, and he'll present tomorrow. So I'm moving on to policy and implementation stuff. So I think one of the characteristics of the blue carbon initiatives is linking with green-grey or hybrid infrastructure initiatives in Japan. So now we have some technology to grow the hard coral on the wave blocking blocks or tidal flood systems just in front of the seawalls. For the larger spatial scales, we just have created tidal floods using the dredged materials or seagrass meadows, or even broader scale. We have macroalgae beds all around the airport seawalls. This is the Japanese sink potential of the natural system, and which is estimated to be around 1 million tons per year. This can be contribute only 0.2% of the Japanese NDC. It's very small, and you see that we have to reduce the emission more and more to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. So this is a component of the sink potential in various natural blue carbon system in Japan, and you see the seaweed system and the seagrass system is a major carbon sink in Japan. So now good news is that the mangrove has been included in the Japanese GHG inventory accounting from this year. And more good news would be that the Japanese government is now considering the inventory accounting for the seagrass meadows or even seaweeds. So that's very exciting because the mangrove is a third of the inclusion after Australia and the US. But if possible, the seaweed accounting is a world first case. So, but as I said, the amount of the removal is very small, 1 million tons. So I think we need more expand the carbon sink using some seaweed farming facilities as well as fish rocks as well. But to do so, we have to study more and more about the seaweed farming. Per se is suitable for the CDR, like this, and to investigate the farming per se is suitable. We have to measure the from number 1 to number 4 process within the seaweed farming facility, as well as ambient control reference sites. Well, I'm going to the varying VC initiatives impact. As that I believe that we have to show the economic benefit of the blue carbon initiatives for the inclusion of the variety of the entities such as private companies. That's why we are developing a blue carbon crediting system as a JBE. So this is the key point for the JBE credits. This is a blue carbon crediting system schemes here. And all the points are very important, and I'm just read them out. The aim was to provide the mechanisms for the flow of the funds to the entities involved, the mainly fisheries and NPOs, but also municipality and the private companies. Our scope is that if intended as a sink measures, seaweed farming as part of the fishery and other business for private company are allowed. Other scope is that only executed and not ongoing or not future project and just removal project are certified. I mean that not any emission reduction project such as RED Plus is not certified in our systems. And we are just adapting the principle from the ICPCM and the methodologies from IPCC, of course. That means that the baseline, we just define the additional CO2 removal as a result of the voluntary activities and report it using the basin methods before after the control impact methods. It's very important for, as I said, in the seaweed aquaculture. And the additionality, we just defined this additionality. It's very difficult for definition, but the acquired credit should be lead to the expansion of the carbon removal initiatives. This is the additionality we define. And other important thing is, we are open to the every documentation of such an application from the credit creators or the results of the purchasers, everything. And we just prepare the third-party validation and verification body. This is the track record of the certification of the J-Blue credits. From the starting the 2020, the number of the project is increasing, and we would expect about the 30 projects and the amount of the 5,000 tons of the CO2 this year. And the certified removal coefficient is around the 2 tons per hectare per year. And I just remove the carbon prices of the J-Blue credits, but I dare to say the colors that now the average prices of the J-Blue credits about more than $500 per tons. But some project is more exceeding $1,000. It's very high compared to the forest in Japan. But I think it's reasonable because the co-benefit the creator is creating. The project is biased to around here, and here the spot where the decline of the macroalgae bed, but active recovery project ongoing. That's why here and here it's biased. So this slide may show the characteristics of the Japanese blue carbon initiatives. I think the credit creator is mostly fishermen, 82%. But there's a high percentage of the NPO and other local organization or municipality and private company involvement. So that means that the Japanese blue carbon initiatives is kind of collaboration with various entities. The habitat research created is 77% is a macroalgae beds. That's because of the fisherman is the main player. Well, this is the certificate for the credit creator. We just printed out in carbon-free printing, and more. The paper is made from Zostera japonica, seagrass. So for the public awareness, Watanabe Atsushi-san and Mas-san will present just later. So I'm just saying a little bit. So in Japan, there's many TV viewers, and I think that it would be very important for the TV and the mascot for spreading out the BC initiatives for those people who are not so much interested in the blue carbon or blue economy or biodiversity. So this is just my summary. The Japanese blue carbon initiative is still small scales, but many diverse and active. And the Japanese blue carbon initiatives, it's not enough, but making steady progress. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Furukawa, for sharing the up-to-date research, even the ongoing research work for us. I know that some scientists is taking a very difficulty to open up their ongoing project because of the problem for the formality to the paper submission to the science journals. But for the purpose of the policy implementation or making an action in the field, he dared to open up his experience and scientific result showing for us. Thank you very much indeed. And then I'd like to call Dr. Atsushi Watanabe. He's also working for Japan Blue Economy Association, and he's a leading researcher of the Ocean Policy Research Institute. Onya lady, floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Furukawa-san, for a kind introduction. And, I'm Atsushi Watanabe from the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Ocean Policy Research Institute. And I'm also a director of the Japan Blue Economy Association. So I'm working closely with Dr. Kuai. So I'm going to talk a bit about blue carbon to try to move on to the blue economy. So this is a co-benefit or multiple benefit we gain from the blue carbon ecosystems. And we not only gain the carbon benefit or climate benefit, but the blue carbon ecosystems give us more biodiversity benefit that Carlos already explained, and also community benefit. This is very important to implement when we implement the blue carbon project. And now the global leaders and the global enterprises are interested in the high quality or high integrity blue carbon programs. So left report was published and launched during the COP27 last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and explaining about high quality blue carbon principles and guidance. And in this report, it's again explained the importance of not only the carbon or climate benefit, but the nature benefit as well as people's benefit is really important to be a high quality one. So it means if we can only pursue the carbon benefit, but we don't really create a community benefit or biodiversity benefit, it doesn't work. And this is a current blue carbon project implemented globally. And dark green circle means the project is already ongoing, and on mangrove restoration programs. And light green is like a planned programs. So from this global map, we can understand that most of the programs are implemented in the subtropical and tropical developing countries on mangroves. And only in the east coast of US and in Japan, we have a light blue color, which is working on the blue carbon on seagrass restoration. And actually, we are also working on seaweed, but it's not correctly reflected in this paper. But anyway, we are doing something a bit unique in Japan, I think. And I will move on to the core carbon principle. We already had a lot of this kind of topic about the additionality or permanence and robust quantification of emission reduction removals. So these are the really needed to evaluate if the carbon sink is really working properly or something. And also we need a governance phase, which is like effective governance of the programs or how we can properly track the program is going on, and also transparency, how the people outside of the program can understand clearly about the blue carbon programs. But sorry, this is not only related to blue carbon, but all the carbon emission reduction programs should follow this principle. and also robust independent third-party validation and verification is the key for the governance. And lastly, but not the least important, is the sustainable development area that pursues sustainable development benefits and safeguards and contribution to a real net zero transition. So Japan J-Blue credit, we are also comply with this core carbon principles. All right, and to give you a clear idea, I will share with you some examples from Mikoko Pamoja program in Kenya, where I visited in 2019. So here, they have been protecting and conserving the mangrove, 117 hectares of mangroves. And yeah, it clearly produces a carbon benefit to the community, I mean the carbon benefit. And they get the carbon credit in 21,000 US dollars in 2021. And the good thing is that they use most of the revenue for the community. So 94% of this revenue goes to the community. And also interesting is that, of course, it's used for monitoring and evaluation process for the blue carbon to continue. So it's like 36% goes to this monitoring and evaluation procedures. But unique, important point is it's used for community benefit. Like the same percentage, 32% goes to this community benefit. And these are the photos illustrating this community benefit. So they are also, of course, trying to plant mangroves or trying to measure or verify the carbon, the outcomes of their programs, but also they are using the money to give clean water to the communities, and also they are providing a textbook, for example, to the local kids. So they are discussing how they can really solve the local problems by using this kind of revenue. And this is, in the long run, important to continue this kind of program. Okay, so when it comes to J-Blue credit, as Kuwai-san, Dr. Kuwai explained, so far we have 22 certified programs in Japan, from Hokkaido to southern part of Japan, and the western part of Japan has more programs because of they are challenging to solve the Isoyake problem. Isoyake was sea barren, sea desertification, desertification issues. But anyway, the program, project, many of the programs have been implemented by fishers or fishers association. 86% was carried out by Fishermen's Association. And sorry, a bit different in the statistics. Maybe Kuwai-san has included more up-to-date data. But anyway, more than 80% of the project was involving the fishers. And followed by private companies and non-profit organizations and municipality or local government. So they are not working inside or separately. They are working together. So this is very diverse range of the actors working together in the case of Japanese FURUKAWA programs. And I also want to point out that only 10% of the academia are included, so it's a bit of a challenge. We need to include more academia. Okay, and project implementer's voice, you can see what's the introduction of each program from our Sasakawa YouTube channel. But anyway, there are 22 programs, project can be seen only in Japanese, sorry, but you can see what they're doing. So here, I want to focus on purchaser's perception. Who is really purchasing the J-Blue credit, what they're thinking, how they want to contribute to the environmental restoration or the improvement of the environment. So we performed a questionnaire survey this year. Last year, we had 95 entities purchased JBlue credit. And we asked 84 out of these 95 entities to answer our questionnaire through Google form. And 63 responses were received. So it means 75% of the respondents answered our questionnaire. And we asked very simple questions, only 3 questions. First, reasons for purchasing JBlue credit. Second, future request for JBlue credit. And third, your opinions about JBlue credit or Japan Blue Economy Association. Okay, so sorry, the items are shown in Japanese, but this is a fast result. Please answer all of the following questions that apply to your reason for purchasing credit. And in a nutshell, it says many respondents answered that they want to support local activities or local entities. They are like a supporter of the local programs or entities. And second is they want to raise awareness within their companies or something about the environmental sustainability or blue carbon. So these are the main motivation the entities purchased the blue carbon JBlue credit. And second, please answer all of the following that apply to your future request for JBlue credit. Yeah, there are many requests related to the extending the public application period. Sorry, this is very technical, but we just had a 1 month period for the companies to purchase, but it was a bit short, so we extended this period now. But anyway, and simplifying and expediting the administrative procedures, this is a bit difficult to follow, maybe. And second, there are also high expectation for utilizing the JBlue credit for a negative adjustment, which means the company can use this purchasing of JBlue credit to really offset their emissions and report to and use it for the reporting. And third, JBlue credit, if you have any opinions about JBlue credit or JB, please feel free to write down. So I have, we got many requests, and first is we need to raise more awareness about the blue carbon itself. That's something Kuwai-san explained at the last part of the presentation. And second is people would like to purchase the JBlue credit if they can see the impact and sustainability of the project. So they're like judging if this could be sustainable or not. And also third is they would like to see more open information on realistic methods of expanding the seagrass or macroalgal bed. So they want to start something that they want to be shared with the actual techniques which they can apply. And fourth is they would like to know how the project implementers use the revenue, JBlue credit, revenue from JBlue credit. And yeah, this can be done through the interaction between the carbon program implementer and the purchaser. And it's really happening these days. And some additional comments and requests are that it's important to consider effective measures to prevent feeding damage, which causes isoyake or seed acidification, and to raise initial cost because it's difficult to start project without funding. And most of the cases, they get the funding from local government or sometimes private sectors, but it's a little bit challenging to this hurdle to be cleared. And also, we need to reduce the survey costs that we already discussed extensively by the previous speakers. We can use biologging, like tiger sharks, or we can use the green laser techniques, maybe. But we need to, anyway, it's a bit costly, so we need to reduce the cost of the techniques. Okay, and also we need to use measures other than the amount of CO2 certified. This means we need to somehow include the co-benefit by quantifying the benefit for the biodiversity or community benefit, which I will later touch upon a bit. And it's also important to link JBL credit with national legislation or law systems, such as Act on Promotion Global Warming Countermeasures and the GX League, which means the Green Transformation League, which Japanese ministry has set forth. Yeah, and actually we need to spread and share this kind of current and future technologies to scale the blue carbon. So some of the projects has used recycled materials in Hokkaido or in the Kyushu area, and that to restore macroalgal bed, by using the steel-making slugs or blocks made from copper slug mortar. And some project has removed and transferred the sea urchin to the land farming facility, and then try to see the macroalgal bed restoration by that intervention of that sea urchin moving. Yeah. And then also development of new biotechnology has been implemented in some of the areas where they can try to, for example, restore the seaweed bed with a faster growing seaweed. All right. So we also need the observation technology. Maybe I can skip this and this part because Koya-san has already extensively explained of the new technology which has to be developed to make sure that carbon benefit has been achieved. But also, I think we put too much people and organisms in the left-hand figure, but we also need to somehow evaluate the community benefit and biodiversity benefit. And through this kind of blue carbon programs. And actually, last but not the least, the evaluation of co-benefit is really instrumental to the sustainability of blue carbon programs. And the left one is, I think, US is doing this kind of land ecosystem co-benefit sharing. So there are two different ways to stack blue carbon ecosystem, not only carbon benefit, but they're working on also species like biodiversity credit, shade credit, or water quality credit. And they can either do the stack, they can separately sell the credit, or they can bundle them together to sell. And also, right-hand side is a Japanese research program working on the evaluating the co-benefit of the restored shallow coastal ecosystem. So green is the blue carbon benefit. So it's only a part of the benefit, as you can clearly see. And we may have a 5 times higher benefit by accumulating all the benefit from the restored coastal ecosystems. So I think this is a summary of my presentation, and we should, to transform from blue carbon to blue economy, we would need to not only the carbon value of the blue carbon programs, voluntary carbon market project with high integrity that contribute to the sustainability of the environment, and local communities, such as the Kenyan cases, should be sought after. And JBC purchasers express through our questionnaire survey a willingness to support local activities and local entities, local communities, and to use the VCM, voluntary carbon market, to raise awareness about the decarbonization and the environmental betterment within their own companies. And third, JBL credit purchasers also indicated a need to share effective measures against the Isoyake seed desertification, to seek initial funding sources, and to reduce survey costs. And finally, there is a need for research and method development to evaluate the positive impact on biodiversity and local communities. That's something we should pursue, and we want to discuss in the next panel discussion on tomorrow's presentation. So that's all from me, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Watanabe, for the elaboration of what is going on under the initiative of the JBE, and also the vast target of the what we are tackling. Especially we inspired by thinking that the new relationship, building the new relationship with the diverse stakeholders, including the investors and the policymakers and scientists. So really, I'd like to say thank you and gratitude, a big gratitude for the four distinguished and beautiful presenter of the keynote speech in this afternoon. Would you please join me to taking a big hand for them again to the keynote speakers. それでは、いただきます。
Thank you very much. I now turn the microphone to Saiki-san, and we are now going to have a panel discussion session moderated by Dr. Hori. So, Saiki-san, would you come up here? So, we need a little bit of time to arrange the stage. So there are so many new words that came up during 4 keynote speeches. There are so many things that sometimes it was hard for me to catch up with. But what struck you most? The blue carbon's core benefits were identified by Dr. Duarte. There are many linkages, and the importance of the investing in the long term in the marine life, the animals and the turtles and the sharks, and so very interesting to see partnership with animals, with the turtles and sharks. Well, the nature needs us, and we are helped by nature. He gave us Dr. Duarte gave us very interesting examples, and Ms. Gonzalez from PEMC said that the East Asia sea area, the Southeast the Asian area is a hotspot of the blue carbon ecosystem in the world, and that made me very interested in knowing more about the issues and the challenges, and also the Okinawa's the tourism, the industry utilizing the underwater landscape, using the US smartphones, and so when you come to the corals, then you can see the CO2 concentration is going down, suggesting that the corals are working as serving as sinks of the carbon. The research is still underway, but the pleasure boat itself is open, of course, to tourists. So children they would be stimulated, I believe, by using their smartphones, in knowing about the service provided by corals, for example.
We would like to pass the floor for Dr. Hori.
はい。
じゃあお願いします。
どうぞ前の方にお越しください。ご準備よろしいでしょうか。では準備ができましたので、これからモデレーターに水産研究教育機構の堀様に入っていただきまして、パネルディスカッションをしたいと思います。それでは堀様よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、ありがとうございます。水産研究教育機構の堀です。よろしくお願いします。My name is Masakazu Hori from Japan Fisheries Research and Education Agency. So I'm very honored to join this panel discussion. So I am a member of JBE, Japan Blue Economy Association, and also a member of Seaweed Farm Project led by Carlos. So I'm very happy to have a discussion with my colleagues and Amy's. So many thanks to the organizing committee. So let me start discussion. So at first, I will give you questions about your keynote speech, each by each, from Carlos, Amy, Kuwai-san, and Atsushi-san, and then take questions from participants. It's okay? Okay, at first, it's your turn, Carlos. So in my keynote, in your keynote, so you mentioned about national, so many ongoing national projects, many countries of BC habitat. So I guess so they expect not only the CO2, the effect CO2 sequestration, but also co-benefits of blue carbon ecosystem as nature-based solutions. So, and you also mentioned we should consider co-benefit together as a natural capital. It's right? That's right? But in my opinion, so it is so difficult for scientists to explain the value of total natural capitals, to the market and traders and private companies. So if you have some idea or suggestions how to do it, so please give us please.
Thank you. So I would like to use first the first 30 seconds of my reply to congratulate my colleagues for the excellent development of the blue carbon program in Japan. So I'm very impressed of the progress made, and also we need to reflect that much of this development have actually happened during the pandemic. And we now forgot how difficult it was to do anything in the real world during the pandemic, particularly to collaborate and to get in touch and even to go to the field. So I would like to commend all of the community that has been involved in the program by developing this very successful model for the world in the hardest possible times. And just to explain, so I was talking about natural capital recently in a conference about the sports. So I was giving a talk about sports and biodiversity in a conference organized by the International Olympic Committee. And then I had to explain natural capital. And the easiest way to explain it for everybody is to focus on a very small organism, which is bees, right? So bees are just one species, well, 20,000 species, but one type of insect that goes around and so on, but we don't think much of it. But turns out that 70% of the crops depend on bees for pollination, and 30% of total food production depends on bees. And they're going down, they're declining. We have lost about 25% of biodiversity in terms of species, and we also have a major crisis of bee decline globally. First because synthetic chemicals, but now also climate change and extreme temperatures are leading to failure of bee colonies. So just imagine that small insect that is responsible for 30% of all the food we eat. So I think that everybody can relate to, and everybody can understand that we actually don't give credit and don't give value to nature for the work they do on our behalf. I believe that there's a much broader awareness and a different relation between society and nature in Japan and other nations that there is in Western nations, where most of our approach is extractive. In Japan, for instance, I forgot the name, but there's a Japanese verb that is part of the traditional work of the fishermen, which if the day is 8 hours of work, then 6 hours they extract fish from the ocean, 2 hours they improve the ecosystem so it can continue to be productive. So that giving back to nature and recognizing the importance of habitats to supply our food is already embedded in your culture. So you recognize that value of the natural capital, and then you're willing to put work, which in fact has a monetary value, to improve your natural capital. So I think translating that into economic value and an investable value is easier for yourselves and your culture than from the Western world, where we have grown increasingly detached from nature. So I'm now part of something called the Blue Institute, which is just started a month ago. That is mostly economists working in financial markets, and myself, I'm the only scientist. And this aims to develop an operational and investable concept of natural capital, particularly with a focus on blue natural capital. So we're busy developing metrics and governance mechanisms, markets, and a global bank of natural capital that we believe should manage some of the revenues on behalf of all of humanity. So the challenges are to come up with a single metric for biodiversity that is transposable across ecosystems and that everybody can understand, and also to be able to monitor and track that value, which is now becoming increasingly easier with technologies such as eDNA, with remote sensing like drones that Tomohiro was showing very nice developments. So I think now we have the mechanisms to be able to track biodiversity, and an investor is sitting in, let's say, Okinawa and is investing on natural capital in the Philippines. It is now possible to actually log in and check how that biodiversity is doing using remote sensing and other tools. So I believe it can be done in 2 years, but it does require inputs from many people. It requires input from I think less input from scientists than it requires from economists and governance agents. And in month of this year, in May, the colleague that I'm developing this with, there is an economist called Ralph Shami, that he left the International Monetary Fund in April to work on nature positive economies with me. So we were invited to a whole day in the European Central Bank. And we were invited to the European Central Bank because there was an internal debate of the member states. They already have a climate unit, a climate research unit in the European Central Bank, and they wanted to do something about nature, but some of the member states thought that nature had nothing to do with the economy and inflation, which is the main focus of the European Central Bank. And we discussed during a whole day with the researchers, with the advisors to the counselors to the board, and also with Madame Christine Lagarde, that is the chair of the president of the European Central Bank, on the importance of nature to the economy and the importance of nature to inflation. And 2 weeks later, they issued a statement on the Financial Times about the importance of investing in nature to be able to also contain inflation, which is a global problem. So we see the concept of natural capital now starting to get the attention of international financial organizations and also central banks. And I believe that if we unite forces in 2 years, we might have the metrics required to bring it to life.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions from panelists? No? Okay.
Okay. Can I ask Carlos about your experiences in supporting many countries to develop blue carbon program or credit? For example, you went to China, or you went to Korea, or you went to Caribbean countries. And what do you find the uniqueness of the East Asian countries in terms of blue carbon, or the relation between the coastal ecosystem and the people in the area? I mean, coastal area, or any.
Yeah, so I see a very strong uptake of blue carbon strategies and programs in Asian nations because of the fact that many of these habitats are deeply embedded in your culture. And it's not only Japan, but also Korea, and also, which is one big seaweed producing nation, but also China. In fact, I was presenting on the last 2 days to the Economic and China Economic and Social Council, that is a very high-level forum. We were discussing on the blue economy, but I presented them with their achievements on blue carbon. So they have managed to increase mangrove areas in China by about 35% over the last 20-some years. They have been able to stop losses of seagrass, and now they're starting to rebuild seagrass ecosystems. That's recent. So they were declining until maybe 15 years ago, but now there are no losses, and in some areas they are expanding. And in salt marshes, they are expanding salt marsh areas, but they're coping with problems with an invasive species called Spartina angliflora. So they have issues with invasive species, but they're very much aware of the importance of these habitats that are traditionally important. In fact, in China, there was a long tradition of circular economies in aquatic ecosystems that produce food, but also keep the ecosystem healthy. And likewise, in Japan and Korea, and I've also been working with Malaysia and other nations, Indonesia, that proximity to marine ecosystems is very clear, and it makes advancing blue carbon projects in society much easier. Still, there's a need to improve communication. I love the how you call it, the mascot, the seagrass mascot, because in the Western world, I had to spend a lot of time explaining what seagrass are, because they don't even know what seagrass are. They think it's algae, and they are not nice. So I think it's very good to bring all that awareness already to schools. But I believe that in Japan particularly, but in Asia, you haven't lost the connection to nature as we had in the Western world. So you have that advantage.
Thank you. Okay, so maybe scientists, we have to expand our knowledge of natural capital more and more to the social communities, I think. Yeah, thank you very much, Carlos. So next is Amy. So I am so impressed by your example, typhoon attack. So I have studied seagrass bed in Thailand when tsunami by Sumatra earthquakes attacked the Andaman Sea areas. So that I can realize the importance of blue carbon habitat as a green infrastructure. So maybe climate change increase such kind of disturbance to the coastal lines and human communities human communities. So restoration projects using certification program, carbon credit, maybe will become standard in near future, I think. So I have a question about possible potential risk and barriers to proceed such kind of restoration program of blue carbon habitats, or so in your case, PEMC certification program is now ongoing, you mentioned, so just started. So if you have some experience, so would you give us a suggestion about the risk when you conduct the project in local area with local stakeholders?
Okay, just before I go into that, I just want to add to the nature and environment links, natural capital and environmental links. The value of the ocean, especially in this region, is very important. And in many economies, we've published a regional state of the ocean and coast report in 2021, where despite the pandemic, you can see that the gross GDP of most countries range, in our 11 country partners, range from 3 to 87%. Countries like Timor-Leste, Cambodia, really, depending on the natural capital, the blue capital. And we're not just talking about the traditional blue economy industries, the traditional ocean economy industries, but looking also into marine biotechnology and all this of future potentials as well. But even without that potential value yet, at the moment, some of these countries are dependent. 80%, 87% of their GDP comes from the ocean economy. Yeah. So on the risk of blue carbon certification, mind you, PEMC is just starting the program, and blue carbon certification is just one solution to the solutions on climate action that we are advocating for. Nature-based solutions, restoration is still pretty much a big part of what we should be advocating for. Though now the risk, at the moment we have a lot of this greenwashing. Countries come, they plant, the usual method is that they plant mangroves, have a photograph, company had an already contributed to blue carbon, and then they come up with some universities and some entities actually certify it already as carbon credit. Just 1-2 mangrove planting session, and there's no monitoring, there's no verification. So those are some of the risks. And then also there are these mismanaged expectations about local communities' involvement, and I think it has been emphasized enough in J Blue Credit and even in Carlos' presentation, that local communities' interest, given that they are the local stewards, have to be are to be primordial in any of these economic systems. So that, and we still have a long way to go in terms of awareness raising. I remember when I was small, seagrass are a nuisance. You want to go to beach resorts that are clear, right? You don't want anything that would, that when you step on the underwater, that would hurt your feet. No sea urchin, no seagrass. Now we realize that actually, and my son was one of those who said, Mama, he's in Denmark right now, he's a student. Mama, did you know that, sargassum can be made into ice cream and yogurt? I was like, yeah, I know that, son. And you said when you were young, you didn't like all this seagrass. So, the world has changed, and even us have to be educated about that. And we grew up in these communities, but because we want, we want tourism to be, we want to go to beach resorts that are clean, and that's not what we want to do. And so I'm one of the key takeaways for me from the presentation of Professor Takawai was that we can have coastal tourism, seaweed farming, yeah? Because in the Philippines, for example, one of the things with seaweed is that it's one of the best disaster relief livelihoods that you can give to communities, because it's fast, microfinancing can do it, and you get money immediately. But I saw in his presentation that seaweed farming could be part of ecotourism. I don't think, and I know that there are scientists here from the Philippines, I don't think we've done ecotourism via seaweed farming, right, or appreciation of seaweed. We have mangrove planting, and we're not sure whether they are really planted in areas where there should be. And there's a lot of that in Southeast Asia already. So I really appreciated the presentation. I mean, practical ways where could be replicated and adapted in other parts of the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So other comments and questions to Amy's? No? Okay. Okay, Kuai-san, it's your turn. You have a lot of experience, so many projects, so using new technologies. So do you have any ideas or suggestions to reduce such kind of misleading of blue carbon project, or some kind of financial aspect? I'm sorry, I'm not good explanation in English. Yeah. Understanding? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question, but one of the things I just presented the importance of the validation and the verification bodies, but that's one of them. And more importantly, I just think about the importance of the transparency, because now JBE is open to public every documents or presentation slides and more, and just the purchaser or buyer is just looking at the evidence or some data to buy or not. This is that if the project is very good, that they are willing to buy. But if we are just not disclosed to the any information to the public, the buyer cannot determine the purchase. So that's why one of the big challenges for to reduce the risk of the misreading of the carbon credit is just disclosing every information, I think.
Thank you so much. I have an additional question to Kuwai-san. So you developed so many kind of new technologies to survey the seagrass bed, macroalgae bed. So, but it costs so much for local project. So do you have any idea so we can support this kind of project using JB's system or some credit, carbon credit, or other methods? Yeah.
I think that at the development stage, such a device is expensive. It's a natural. But if the device is useful for the blue carbon initiatives or some other marine environmental initiatives, the needs for such a device is increasing, and the cost must be decreased in some years. So I just expect the developing devices is good for everyone, but at the same time, I think that using such a remote sensing technology or biologging technology or eDNA technologies might be decreasing the cost of the initiatives. But another aspect, I just want to say that if you are doing the blue carbon initiative only by yourselves, the cost is very high. But if you are collaborating with other experts, including investors or some technicians as well, or academia, so the cost might be decreasing without developing the new such devices. So I think the collaboration with different experts might be one of the options for reducing the costs and risk.
Thank you. So last is Atsushi-san. So thank you for your keynote speaking. So you introduced so many kind of projects all over the world in relation to OPR activities. So I have a simple question about the criteria. OPR Institute, OPR decided to take action for a project or finalize the project.
Okay, thank you for a very good question, tough question to answer. Yeah, because we want to replicate the program. For example, if we travel to Africa, we need to find a model kind of program which can be diffused to the other areas, because it's like a role model. So yeah, so we will see how the local stakeholders are involved or the multi-stakeholders are engaged with the program. Otherwise, it will not continue, like in my understanding. And also, yeah, in Japan, like Wei-san explained, we are trying to collaborate with, for example, tourism sector, or for example, with the renewable energy sector, or of course, fishermen are already involved, but many other sectors. Otherwise, to reduce the cost also, but also we need to like engage more partners to be become a more like a high quality program. So that's something I'm trying to find examples and or develop the programs. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So from now, I will take questions from the participants. Do you have any questions, comment? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Suzuki, University of Shizuoka. I have two questions. One is also I working about the coral reef and the seagrass and sometimes the mangrove. And anytime that we try to calculate the total carbon budget and also including the flux. But the question is including the microbiology or not? Because we know very well about the ecosystem is so much complicated from micros algae and also bacteria and also the macroalgae, something like that. So including or not on a calculation blue carbon, one is this one question. So another question, a very simple question. Oh, okay, thank you. Anyone?
Yes.
Anyone? Yeah.
So obviously,
I'm so much interesting too. So
yeah, obviously microbes are fundamentally important in the functioning of all ecosystems, including oceans, and they are integral parts of blue carbon ecosystems. In fact, one might think that blue carbon ecosystems are such intense carbon sinks because of failure of the microbial system to be able to decompose all the carbon, but that is due to the fact that the soils are highly anoxic, so the composition rates are slowed down due to the absence of oxygen to supply more efficient metabolisms, but also because the organic matter that is generated by coastal vegetation, be mangrove, seagrass, or salt marshes, or even seaweed, usually is very depleted in nitrogen and phosphorus, so highly recalcitrant in principle to decompose, and also seaweed in particular have very hard to decompose seawalls, cellular cell walls, and they also release organic carbon that can be highly, highly refractory. So, but microbial systems are very important. For instance, in mangroves, much of the carbon that is sequestered in a mangrove does not come from the mangrove itself, but it comes from the microbial mat. So the microbial mat of mangrove systems is actually fueling the whole food web and responsible for perhaps 40% of the carbon that is sequestered in the mangrove ecosystem. So the microbes are there, and possibly it is also possible to use probiotics and microbial additions to even enhance the blue carbon carbon sequestration in these habitats as well.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Really great talks. Enjoyed them. Carlos started about combining carbon and biodiversity and that putting those together. And Dr. Watanabe talked about adding community capital with carbon and biodiversity. And all of you talked to some degree about the importance of the community engagement. And I'm wondering how we could enhance the community and social, cultural aspects to make this blue carbon revolution that we're trying to initiate here more palatable to the masses. Any ideas?
Maybe
We need more models. I mean, the model that Atsushi-san showed, Kenya, that's been by Grid Arundel has been I think, promoted so many times already. And so I think we need more models to see how it works from the local communities to be more convincing of its effects. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the great question. Yeah, it depends on the context of the community in the area. So, example, in Japan, maybe you will listen to the many great presentations tomorrow, how local communities will be involved for the restoration of Amamo or Eelgrass. And over time, very long time of the period, like 20 years, something. And yeah, in the case of Kenya, because there are a bunch of issues aside from the coastal ecosystem degradation, as I explained. So they also need to incorporate this kind of solving issues, right, in the blue carbon program. That's somehow you can engage more people, local communities, and so on. So yeah, that's some of my reaction at that moment, but we can explore the more tomorrow and the day after tomorrow to see how we can really engage local communities. Thank you.
If I may add to that, first one thought, and is that one of the requirements for blue carbon certification is the requirement of permanence, has been already explained. So permanence means that the carbon that is removed, there should be a commitment to maintain that carbon away from exchanging with the atmosphere for about 100 years or longer. So 100 years is 3 human generations. So the commitment to permanence of the project involves 3 human generations. And if I'm the project promoter, I'm going to do very little of the work because I might be gone in 10 or 20 years. If I was Japanese, maybe 40 years, because the longest lifespan in the world. But so that means that I'm really committed to my daughter and my grandson to execute the project. There is no government that can commit more than a few years, so even less in some in some countries. But that means that the only way to the only guarantee to permanence, and I would say that even to investors, is community engagement, because the community are rooted locally, and they're going to be the owners of the project, and the ones that can only provide that commitment across generations. And in fact, sustainability really means a commitment across generations. So I think that's why blue carbon projects, community engagement, and sustainability are all coming together in the same concept. And I'd like to add one project that I'm quite happy to collaborate with. So I'm providing the scientific advice for a project called Hino Moana Halo, that is a Maori-led project. So the project was the 13 tribes of Maoris in New Zealand got together to claim ownership of biodiversity resources, and they have created the first indigenous-led blue carbon program that is of large scope. So they started by creating a blue natural capital blue carbon project, but they want to go beyond carbon in New Zealand. But they are now making alliances with all of their sister nations in the Pacific. They all recognize themselves of being of the same nation. So they have already agreements and involvement in the project with Cook Islands and Tahiti and Fiji and Samoa, and they just completed contracts also and agreements with native communities in Alaska and British Columbia, and even in the Arctic with Inuit. All of them share the same values of the importance of nature, and that will be the largest blue carbon project in the world, and is led by indigenous people. And when we talk about permanence, that's really intrinsic to their values. So that involvement of indigenous people and having projects that are consistent with their culture and values finally reconcile values with value, with economic value to the components of the oceans that they always recognize as being valuable, but to this end they had zero economic value.
So any other questions, comment?
Thank you very much for very, very interesting the talks. So I'm Tanaka from Hachinohe Institute of Technology. So I have a question to Dr. Carlos. So the idea, if there are tiger shark eats sea turtle, and the sea turtle can't eat the seagrasses. Seagrasses is protected. I'm very happy, so the seagrass is good. But there must be another problems. So if I imagine there are plenty of sharks in Okinawa beach, seagrass bed, it's very dangerous. So the children can't swim in the ocean, and fishermen can't catch the fishes. So I think, what do you think? So how can we do?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think that many generations of humans, and in fact, there is a transgenerational problem, were terrified by the movie Shark. Sorry, movie Jaws. So the movie Jaws have had a huge damage in demonizing sharks to the public eye. And I was director of a research center in Australia, in Perth, called the Oceans Institute. And my biggest nightmare was every year just around Christmas time, there will be, when people start to go in masses to the beach, there will be attacks from sharks, and then there will be always a frenzy, the media trying to play with the statistics to show that the attacks were increasing, and the reaction of the policymakers to that hysteria, because it's really hysteria of the population, was to start cooling projects or deploy nets that actually kill a lot more animals, not sharks, than they kill sharks, and didn't make the population any safer. So when you look at data, every year there's actually a repository called the Shark Files that is kept in Florida. Florida is the area of the world with the highest number of shark attacks per year. In Australia, in a year, there's probably 3 fatal attacks, and maybe 5 attacks in total. So the number of people that are killed by bees, which bees provide natural capital, but some people are allergic to the stings. So there are 10 times more people killed by bees than sharks, and 100 times more people killed by lightning than by sharks. So I think what we need to avoid demonizing sharks, and I think we need to really put data in context and engage with the public to educate them. So I think we have that fear from sharks, but in fact, probably none of us know anyone, say in our network, that have died by a shark attack. We've read it on the news because it always makes it to the news, but in terms of global statistics or even local statistics, is absolutely nothing. But I did have a rule when I swam in the beach in Western Australia. Every day there was a plane swimming to look at. They will close the beach if the sharks seen were more than 4 meters in size. And then I will never be the one swimming the farthest onshore. So that was my rule. But again, education is very important, and I forgot to mention on my last response when we were talking about the intergenerational responsibility for blue carbon projects, permanence, and all of the work we do in the ocean, that I love the initiative of the Amamo 2023 conference to involve high school students and the youth in the conference. I think we really need to give them the floor to empower them, because when we talk about the future of our planet, climate, biodiversity, is really the future belongs to them, not to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I feel very easy, so thank you very much.
So one more short question over there.
Thank you very much. My name is Azuma. I'm from Yokohama in urban areas in Japan. The civil engineering is used a lot, and oftentimes that is combined with that is incorporated in blue carbon project. Would you please shed more light on it? What kind of project, blue carbon project, do you think we can develop further in combination with the civil engineering project?
gray infrastructure with the
with
green gray, hybrid
with,
infrastructure for
hybrid.
Well, I actually believe that my colleagues, particularly Tomohiro, is much better prepared to answer that response, because that's something that his institute has been pioneering. So I believe that there's a great potential in hybrid solutions, and particularly we can green or blue much of the concrete defenses that we have around the oceans, and I believe that the institution that Tomohiro is involved with is doing a great work in turning gray walls that protect airports and ports in Japan into living walls that are sequestering carbon but also supporting biodiversity. But again, Tomohiro, you know a lot more about this.
どうしましょう。日本語で答えましょうか。
Perhaps I should answer your question in Japanese, but perhaps your question addressed not to me, but to other panelists.
It's one of the good at doing in Japan, but well, I think that there need to be share with such a technology to the other countries, but so the caution is that the using a cement or concrete itself it emits the CO2. So if you are doing some climate change measures, countermeasures, we have to care about the emission during the creation of the construction. Yeah.
Yeah, so just so that is actually the conventional Portland cement that emits, I think it's about 6% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from cement production, but there are new approaches to building concrete that are changing that conversation, and now the world is looking at buildings, whether they can be in the ocean or on land, as a way to sequester carbon. So for instance, a technology that I'm very keen on because it's inspired by the ocean and works with the ocean is a new technology called Partana that I was discussing earlier on lunch. So Partana is a new concrete that is entirely different from Portland cement, that absorbs CO2 rather than emit it, and absorbs large amounts of CO2 during the production process, and also during the lifespan of the concrete on air, then it continues to absorb CO2. But that concrete is actually formulated by all waste, metal, scrap, and brine from desalination. Because it was developed in the Bahamas, where they don't have material, so they use brine. So 40% of the mass of the concrete comes from brine, and most of the rest comes from metal residues and scrap. And I was telling Bill Dennison that in the Bahamas, where the first houses built with Partana have been developed, the house pays for the down payment of the owner. So the owner, when they buy the house, they get carbon credits from the house. That's about 15% of the value of the house, which is what they have to give as a down payment. So the carbon credits of the house pay for the initial payment of the house, which is a beautiful proposition. But we are using now this material to also create a framework for coral restoration, because again, we would not like to deploy conventional cement that generates emissions of carbon dioxide to restore coral reefs, when the loss of coral reefs is largely due to emissions of greenhouse gases. So there are now alternatives that we can use to build a gray infrastructure, couple it with a blue and green infrastructure, but is gray infrastructure that sequesters carbon.
Thank you. So you have several questions more, but I'm sorry, my timekeeping is not so good. Exceed the time to close. So as a summary of this discussion, so we learned we should target not only CO2 sequestration, but also co-benefit of blue carbon ecosystems, especially to harmonize between CO2 sequestration and biodiversity, and with social community. And also we have a potential risk, possible risks of misleading, but we can also have various approaches to avoid such kind of risks. So I believe we can expand blue carbon activities immediately with knowledge we got in this discussion. So let me express our gratitude to all keynote speakers and participants. Thank you for joining this session. Thank you very much.